Once again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Brian Christopher Kohberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Brian Kohberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latest gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Philip J. Fry, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT Show. I'm all over the place. I can't figure out the camera situation. What's up, everybody? Welcome in. If you're watching this, if you're joining from the Mob Crew, I want to say shout out to Mob Crew. I was just out there on their channel. They were talking about the Jack and Lilly disappearance, bringing out our live from yesterday. And so shout out back. Thank you for tuning in there. From there, I want to thank our mods, great mods, always keeping the chat and everything in order. I also want to thank our subscribers and our members. You guys rock. So today we're going to be going back into the Jack and Lilly Sullivan disappearance. There's been some more updates in the case. The search continues in the case with the cadaver dogs. I've gotten some information that, from the events that have occurred today. I got some information about a vehicle that was towed. Not a part of the search, though. It was not a part of the search or anything like that. It may not be as interesting as people are making it out to be, but we're going to break down what happened with that situation and everything that goes around that. There's also an article that was just dropped from CT News that we're going to kind of look into a couple of things that they're saying and kind of put in my perspective on that as well. And then, but before we start, we're going to talk a little bit about Brian Kohberger earlier. I was going to have my friend Warning Label Nina on the channel. She's doing some amazing work out there in Idaho. She had a meeting with president of the U of I, and they're talking about doing something with the 1122 King Road property. And the thing that they're talking about, and I'm going to get her story and everything else that comes along with it, is perhaps making a dog park called Murphy's Park. And so, we got some information that's going to be coming out about that here relatively soon. We're going to talk about, her journey out there and her journey from Alabama through Texas, where I met her alongside with my wife, and then how she, hooked it up towards Idaho and is out there now. And so we'll get her story. It's been a one full of happiness and adversity, and you guys won't want to miss it. So we're probably going to reschedule that till Saturday. So be on the lookout for that one. Okay. On Thursday, I have MD Carol Lieberman. She's going to be on the channel. We're going to be talking about Tyler Robinson, the person who's been arrested for the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And we're going to be talking about Brian Kohberger. So that's going to happen Thursday night. You guys don't want to miss that one. That one's going to be a great show. Miss Lieberman, if you're not, or Dr. Lieberman, if you're not familiar with, she's been on Fox News. She's been on Max News, all the major networks, News Nation. She's been across the board talking about, I think they call her the terrorist therapist or something like that. So you don't want to miss it. That's going to be happening on Thursday night. I already made a link for that episode, so go get that notified. All right, without further ado, let's break it down. Let's talk about the events of today. So the RCMP was back out there today. They continued their search with the cadaver dogs. Now, yesterday when they went out there, and this is information that I'm getting directly from the source. There's multiple sources. I'm sure you guys can figure it out on this scenario, on who I was talking about or talking with. But dogs came back out yesterday. The dogs that went out there, Narc, he was a black German Shepherd, and he was out there at the property. The other dog, and forgive me, I didn't get the description of the name of this one. This one was out at the blanket site and some other places that I'm aware of that I'm not going to speak on quite yet, but I'll be talking about a little bit later once they're completed. I don't want any interruption out there. So I do know they're going to continue their search tomorrow, and I know where it's going to be, but I'm not going to disclose that until after the fact because I don't want anybody interrupting what it is that they're doing out there. I strongly suspect that the kids walked off. You guys know that. I think that even in this document where it talks about how even the title, RCMP have pulled out all the stops in the search for the missing Nova Scotia children. I think they have. I mean, they crossed their T's and dotted their I's when it came to the parents. And, I know a lot of people say, hey, if you listen to what they say, what they say. I follow the evidence. You know what I'm saying? People's memories, people's thought of what occurred sometimes can be flawed and skewed. And what I follow is law enforcement. So they did background, basically a huge invasive check in their backgrounds, check their phones, check their locations, check their banking statements, all the above. So that's why when, I get a little bit skeptical when I get these theories, when somebody comes in saying, oh, well, maybe it was some drug related. And I'm like, all right, well, Daniel wasn't working very much. They have his bank statements. They have his messages and his text messages. Where's the evidence of the purchasing, the buying, the selling? I mean, if he's buying drugs, he's got to have money from it. Where's the evidence of him going out there and selling stolen goods or where's the evidence of him making money in his text messages and anything that he's then utilizing to go buy all these drugs? And if he's cooking it, well, I mean, if it's something that is like what people are saying is something that you would cook, there's smells, there's chemicals, there's a lot of things that go into play with those things that would have made it very easy to find. Those type of cases that involve drugs are very simple and easy to solve, to be 110% honest with you. Once you have your suspect in mind and you have the cooperation that you have here. And so they pulled out all the stops. I follow what it is that law enforcement did. They've come out and said that they don't believe that there was a criminal offense. They did the investigation to eliminate at least Malaya as a possible suspect in the disappearance and the death of the kids, and that the intention of all that was to prove one way or the other if there was a criminal offense. And so when they've gone into the way and the measures that they've done to say that they don't believe that they committed a crime, I got to believe they have more information than you, I, or anybody else who's watching it from the outside. All right, so they went out there, they switched spots. The brown dog was now in the house. The black dog was out in the fields. Didn't find anything again. So they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's. So they brought two different search teams and they have flip-flopped them. And so that way, in case one of them misses something, the other one can backtrack and see if there's anything. And nothing was found up to this point. I know they're going out to another location tomorrow, and I'll explain where that location is tomorrow. If I talk about this case tomorrow, I might be talking about Timothy D's tomorrow. I haven't decided yet. But once I get the notification that they're done, I may go live twice tomorrow. I'll explain where it's at. Now, as far as the towing of the vehicle, that actually happened before any of the searches occurred. That happened, I believe, on Saturday night. Now, what occurred there is, and this is from multiple sources that I have. To be honest with you, I think I got Daniel kind of told me a little bit, but I'd already kind of known, and I had some other sources reach out to me and kind of clarify everything else. So what occurred was, I guess in Canada, you have some rules and regulations about registering your vehicle within a certain amount of time. And Daniel ended up being pulled over for a traffic violation. And he had just purchased this vehicle 30 some odd days ago. And it's just surpassed the registration period. And so they towed the truck. They've already given him permission to pick it up. So it's not a part of any DNA thing. It's not a part of any tearing down anything. The vehicle wasn't even owned during the time of the disappearance. It was recently purchased, and so there's probably not going to be a lot of evidence there. That's why I said at the top of the show that it's probably not as thrilling as some people are trying to make it out to be. Now, would they have searched it? I would have assumed so. Just to cross your T's and dot your I's, right? Once you have it in possession. Now, how much searching can you do? Now, this is a different place, United States and Canada. Now, in the United States, if this was a situation where we had a suspect's vehicle in custody, you can't just throw like amino black in the back of it and go check it with a black light. You have to have a warrant for that. Even if you tow it and you brought it in, you'd have to have a warrant for that. A warrant would require a PC, and I'm not sure what PC you would have to do something like that. So the searches would be limited to what you could see with your eyes. It would be limited to, what's visually there, as you can kind of go through some of it, because you're going to want to do an inventory. And the inventory is going to allow you to get into places like the glove box, the center console, underneath the seats, those things. But you're not going to have the ability to go through it with a microscope or a black light or any of those type of things. So unless there was something there that was visible to the naked eye that would give them probable cause. And I'm assuming that laws somewhat work similar out there than they do out here in the United States, that at that point you might be able to get, there could be a more invasive search. But if they don't see anything visually with their eyes, nothing's out of place, there's not fluid of some sort, even at that, he just bought the vehicle about 30 some odd days ago, not very long. How much, he wouldn't have had the vehicle at the time of the incident. And so the only way this vehicle could have been used in any sort of part of the crime would have been if he was moving the bodies from one place to another. And so, if they see a large amount of dirt, I guess, even at that, I don't know if that's probable cause if you find dirt inside of a vehicle out in the country. You get what I'm saying? I'm not sure if a judge would sign off on that. I think they would want a little bit more, and especially given the fact that the vehicle was purchased so much after the disappearance. But from what I understand, it's pending pickup. I don't think he's picked it up yet, but they've already released the vehicle back to him. So if they found anything of value of it in there, they wouldn't have released it back to him either. So just a couple of points on that. All right, I want to say thank you to Lori. Thank you, Dan, and your mods. You're the best. Oh, appreciate you. Thank you so much. Caught Up in Crime, been a member for 14 months. Thank you. Caught Up in Crime. Good to see you. Midwest, been a member for 8 months. Warning Label Nina in the house. What's going on? Been a member for 10 months. And Jeremiah coming in as a membership for 13. Thank you so much, guys. We appreciate all you guys. All right. And so what I'll do is Vin Daniel State today saying no vehicles were towed from his place or from his house or any of those things. But this was a situation, I found out last night. Somebody had messaged me saying that on a couple of different other channels that they were saying that this had gotten out. So I reached out to a couple of people to figure out what was going on, and I was able to confirm that it did in fact happen. Now, when I asked Daniel, the first thing he told me was my vehicle was not towed from my yard, not from the house, not from the search. And so, that told me that, one, that the vehicle was towed, right? And I had already spoken to some other people. I want to say, I can't burn a source, but, law enforcement, 6 degrees of separation, even through state lines. I know some folks up in the Northeast, not necessarily that far, well, not before, but it's kind of like the Brian Koberger case. I knew some folks that worked in law enforcement that may have been out of the Pennsylvania area, mainly because I'm a Steelers fan and I go out there a lot and I know some people. So 6 degrees of separation type of thing. You can get pretty close to some stuff, especially if you're doing things the right way. And that's what I try to do, at least. And so I was able to confirm that that there was a traffic stop and that the traffic stop was the result of it. Now, it's not official. Could these people, all 3, 4 of them, be lying to me? 100%. And I just don't see that being the possibility here. But, I think it's a nothing burger. But I know some folks are going to run with it. And I informed that to Daniel. I was like, hey, some of these folks are going to run with it. They're going to say that it had to do something with DNA or it had to do something with the search or the dog's hit or whatever the case may be. Be prepared. I told them, I was like, it's best you tell me what happened so that I can, figure out what happened and explain it. Because if not, then it's a situation where, like anything else, silence builds speculation. If you don't talk about it, you don't come about it, you don't be honest and upfront about it, usually going to come out. And when it does, people are going to ask questions why you weren't being honest and upfront. So he ended up telling me, and, not a big deal. So let's go into this document here and break it down. It says here, Chris Lewis, amid criticism, RCMP have pulled out all the stops in the search for the missing Nova Scotian children. It says here, Malaya Brooks Murray reported Lily and Jack had wandered from their home. She said that they had been playing in the yard of their family home prior to going missing. Immediate search in the dense bush adjacent to the property was conducted in a number of ways, from the hasty initial search by local officers to deeper in-depth and coordinated searches of several square kilometers by trained search teams. The bush is very dense and difficult for trained search team members to traverse. It seems unlikely that 2 children could get far through it. And that's one of the things that why I think Daniel is so adamant that the kids aren't in the woods. And I think this is why Brooks, Murray, Malaya also kind of came to that conclusion, was they couldn't see that these kids could have gotten so far, through dense woods and stuff like that, and not be found by the search team that was out there almost immediately. There was helicopters in the area. There was search teams because they were looking for somebody else that was nearby that were able to come into the situation or come into the area and search immediately. And so their thoughts were, and from what I gathered, and I understand the thought process, is that they couldn't have gotten that far. Now, this is where some of the this is where Daniel's house is. This is down the street. This is down Lansdowne Road. And this is where the blanket was found. Daniel says about 15 feet from the street here. It's a little bit further than that. You put it right here at the edge of the road to about right here. It's about 8 to 9 yards. This says 8 yards here, which is about 24 feet off the roadway and pretty high up, about 6 feet up off the ground. We're going to talk about that blanket and if it was planted, who could have planted it, why, how, and the whole 9 yards. A little bit further up the roadway, down this way, as you can see in this clearing, this is where the pipeline is, and somewhere back here off the road is where they found the boot print. Now, this tells me that the kids most likely walked this direction and then up this way if they wandered off. Right? Let's go off of that basis right now that they wandered off. They left the property. They walked towards the street. I know some people ask, well, what about the dogs only smelling to the street, Daniel? Well, here's the thing. The dogs don't actually smell for like clothing of the kids. They don't take a sniff of the clothing and then go find that specific scent. And it only walked to the edge of the driveway. What those dogs do, and I actually got this information from a couple of different places, and including Janie, who actually spoke with the dog handlers today and yesterday, asking these specific questions. But what the dogs are smelling for are what's out of the ordinary, and which is why they don't utilize the scent of somebody specific. And from what I understand, at the driveway, there was a significant amount of people out there throughout the entire day, including some of the family members on both sides. They were arguing at certain points. There was that's where they grouped up and spoke. So I don't know if that smell may have prevented the dogs from going further because of the amount of people that were out there at that intersection or at that end of the driveway. I think it's quite a bit of a possibility. It doesn't really explain, the scenario out here by the blanket and by the boot print where the dog wasn't picking up a scent either. Now, it could be for a couple of different reasons. It just could have been because maybe perhaps there was searchers that had gone through there. Obviously there was people that were in the area that found the blanket, that found the footprint or the boot print. So that tells us that there was some sort of activity going in and out. Maybe that had some sort of manipulation as far as, or not manipulation, but yeah, maybe that manipulated the dogs to stay in those generic areas where the searchers were, because there was so many of them and they were in that area. Obviously they're the ones that found the items. And so I think it may have been a doomed search with the dogs from the get-go, to be 110% honest with you. And plus it was a very dense forest. I mean, Travis Decker just got found. He was a guy that took the life of his children. He was missing for almost the same amount of time. He missing in June. They were searching for him. They brought in dogs, they brought in all these things, and they found him less than a mile away from where he took the lives of his daughters. And it wasn't like he was in the brush or anything like that either, and so this place being much more dense could be difficult to find somebody in. And so let's see. Just want to make sure I don't got anything missing. All right. Now we're going to talk about what are the possibilities because of this blanket. I think this blanket does hold some pretty big clues. I think so. Now the cadaver dogs, yes, Lori, I was talking about the dogs that were out there to begin with. The dogs that were here recently, the cadaver dogs, are looking for the death of the smell of decomp and things of that nature, 100%. But I was referring to the initial search that happened in the beginning, when the dog only got out to the driveway or when it didn't hit on anything out here. And to be honest with you, I mean, I don't know how well trained the dogs that were out there. I mean, I'm not saying that they weren't trained. I'm sure they were. I'm sure they're well-trained dogs, but the elements play a role in this. Other animals in the area may have played a role in the searchers as far as where the dogs could have gone or didn't go. All right, let me pull back the article up real quick. All right. Let's see. Police dogs, drones, helicopters assisted in the search for a large parcel of land, inherent mine shafts, areas of water and wells while searched in the process. A couple of months later, a search master told the media that she believed the kids were still in the area and then offered a variety of theories why. Let me see. She explained how difficult it was for searchers to even see the ground right through immediately beside them while walking. And so this was one of the searchers who I was out there in the brush, saying it's way possible that they missed something or someone in that brush. A lot of people ask, well, why haven't they found anything? I mean, it's quite possible that those items that people are expecting someone to find, backpack, clothing, shoes, a diaper, they could have literally been inches away from where they stepped. And there's a good possibility. I mean, if you can't see the ground right next to you, you wouldn't be able to see it. You know what I mean? Rumors and accusations. The mother and the common law husband, Daniel Martell, parted ways with a couple of days of the kids going missing and began to living apart. So again, this is one of the things that I say, if you're investigating this crime and you're looking at Daniel Martell as a suspect and you're looking at Malaya Brooks as a suspect, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to separate them so they can't collaborate or come up with a story that is corroborates each other, a fake story. You know, you don't want them to manifest a story, and so you want to separate them. They did that on their own. You also want to turn them on each other, so that way you can get information out of them. They kind of did that on their own. Now, Daniel hasn't come out flat out and said, "Oh, I think Malia had something to do with it," but he's questioned her leaving. He's questioned her actions, and a lot of people have. And I've told Daniel myself as well. I was like, "Hey, you know, she may be acting this way or that way, but she did the exact same thing you did. She turned over her phone, allowed them to look at her banking information, her GPS location on her phone. She didn't lawyer up. She didn't, refuse any interrogation. She went and spoke to them as many times as they needed. So although she wasn't talking to the media, she was talking to law enforcement when they wanted her to. And she also took and passed the polygraph test. So for, her to have passed all those things and been as cooperative and law enforcement still not find anything, and have this also be a situation where you have both parties separate and both parties against each other, and you still can't find anything to even consider a criminal offense. I think that's very telling of the evidence that they have and they've been able to follow. 100% get the things that they've said, but witness testimony, which if these guys didn't have anything to do with this as far as anything nefarious, now, like I've said from the beginning, is there an argument you may have for neglect? 100%. Some people may argue that. I don't know what happened that morning. I can't say that there wasn't any neglect or any of those things. There's some red flags there. I 100% agree with those things. CPS had been called. I don't know the answers to those questions. From what I understand, it had something to do with a learning disability type thing. But I wasn't there, so I can't say 100% sure that that's the case. I know some people have talked about black eyes and this and that, and I 100% see that. For me, this case is very similar to Delphi, when you had Ron Logan, who fabricated a alibi before the discovery of the bodies of the kids on his property. And the reason behind that was because he was doing some things that were illegal that would have violated his parole, which would have ended him in prison, which was the end up result of that, not necessarily related to the nefarious actions that occurred on his property. Law enforcement was after him. They were looking after him extremely hard. And when they couldn't pin anything on him, they still put him in jail for the violation of parole. They went after Daniel and they looked at him. I mean, you read the documents, it tells you everything that they did. They weren't on his side. They treated him like a suspect, and rightfully so. And he cooperated, and he did all the ins and outs, handed over his phone, did everything. And, I just find it odd they couldn't find anything. For somebody to cooperate as much as they did and law enforcement not find anything, or at least a trail that would lead to something, of some sort of criminal activity that could have resulted in the death of the children, whether that be, buying or using hard narcotics, that could lead to, all right, hey, this guy has hard narcotics. We did a search of his property. We couldn't find him, but we have evidence of text messages and banking statements that indicate that he was purchasing and selling, or whatever the case may have been, right? You have all this evidence to prove that at one point that those drugs were there, then you might have a leg to stand on. All right, could this have been in some sort of accident where the kids got involved with it? Did they accidentally get into it? Were they purposefully getting into it? Given purpose. Not saying that's the case here, but I've seen some pretty crappy stuff that some of these sick parents have done, where they have forcibly given their kids drugs at a very young age. I remember there was a situation out in, I think it was like near Houston, Texas, that a person was and showed his like 4-year-old son how to smoke dope. So it was people have done a lot of stupid stuff. I'm not saying that's the case here, but just saying that does happen, right? But they couldn't find anything like that. Now the blanket, let's talk about the blanket. Let me pull up the image of the area. All right. So here's where the blanket was. Now, how can this blanket have gotten there? Let's try to deduce this and see if, how did nobody hear cries if it was 3 degrees? That's freezing. 3 degrees Celsius, Kylie. 3 degrees, so it was like 44 degrees or something like that, 43 degrees. If you're referring to that morning, it was 3 degrees Celsius. Well, anywho, so if this was Daniel, right? Because I think a lot of people look at Daniel and Malaya. One, I don't think they would have passed the polygraph test. It's one thing for one of them to pass, but for both of them to pass, and it's not so much they passed. It said that they were truthful. Not that it was inconsistent, not that it was unable to do it, or because like Janie's, they couldn't do one on hers because she has a heart issue, right? And they came out and said that they weren't able to do that because of it. So if there was a situation there, I think that with Daniel or Malaya, if they were like unknown, right? If it was inconclusive, they would have come out and said inconclusive, instead of it being the way they mentioned it there. Because it said truthful. Now, if Daniel planted it, I doubt he and Malaya would both pass this, because to me, and I've said this from the beginning, if they did something nefarious to these kids, for sure Daniel and Malaya had something to do with it. Janie, her hearing the kids out there in a moment when she's in and out of sleep. I mean, Bethany in the Brian Koberger case thought she heard fireworks at one point, a big crack noise, and she thought it was a firework or something. It's possible she did. It's possible she didn't. But let's just say she did, and she's going out there saying she did hear the kids for sure. So you have 3 people here that are corroborating each other without, they're basically each other's somewhat alibi of when the kids were alive. You have Malaya who hears them, you have Janie who hears them, and you have Daniel who hears them and also sees Lily. And so if, it'd be impossible for one of them to be involved and not the other two, given that scenario, unless something happened like immediately, like at 9 a.m., right? Like Daniel got up after the kids were heard outside by Janie, and then something nefarious happened, which I think would be highly unlikely given the fact that law enforcement were there pretty rapidly after that, maybe an hour later, and they saw no signs of something that would be what you would expect from, I guess, an assault like that. Now, so if something didn't happen that morning, if something happened the night before, whether it was an accident or on purpose, they would all have to be in on it because they all corroborate each other. So it's either all in or all out, right? So you have both of them passing a polygraph test. Now, I think if a polygraph test is going to get something wrong, I think it's more likely that it's going to say that you're lying when you're being truthful versus the other way around. And I think that the other way around would probably be most likely inconclusive versus saying that, oh, you flat out came out honest, right? When it comes to these lie detector tests, they're obviously, they're not admissible in court and things like that for a reason, and I think it's because the false positive happens, false positive saying that you were lying happens more often than you don't want to put your risk into that, right? But I think it's insane for somebody to go through that and pass it, and then a second person. Now, they didn't even use the same. They used 2 different machines, and they used 2 different polygraph investigators. So it's in my opinion, it's very unlikely. So do I think that they planted it? No, I don't, because Daniel was very skeptical about it too. He's like, oh, it's not theirs. And then he came out saying, well, if it is theirs, it's planted. Like, if he planted it, why is he bringing that to its attention? Right. So that doesn't make any sense. That he's going to put it out there and say, oh, it's planted. If he's the one that planted it. So could it be a marker for something as far as, pick up the kids way out here? I mean, it's about 1.6 kilometers. It's about, well, maybe a little bit longer than that. I think it's only about 16 minutes walking. I think it's what it was. It's not very far. And so, what are you going to do? Go put the blanket out there, then run back to the house and hope that when you left the blanket there and got back to the house, that whatever sign you were sending during that time didn't change, whether that's Daniel's asleep. So let's just say that the blanket was a symbol to tell somebody that Daniel was asleep. So, Malea's going to rush outside, go drop off the blanket, then come back to her house and hope that Daniel's still asleep in the time that she left and returned. I don't buy it. I don't buy that. And so, to me, I've always said, I was like, look, is it possible that it was planted? Yeah. If it is, let's figure out by who. Who found it first and foremost. This was Malea's family. But from what I have heard, and I've heard this from, oh gosh, what was her name? Haley's mouth. Now, she didn't tell me directly. This was something different. But I've heard her voice say that she's suspicious of Malaya because Malaya's going to the beach. Malaya's getting dressed up. Malaya's doing this, doing that, not really acting like somebody who's missing her kids. Why would she be telling people that and telling people of her suspicion if she aided in the planting of the blanket? You get what I'm saying? It doesn't jive. So to me, and then also Malaya's parents and stepfather passed as well on lie detector tests. So you have all these people that have passed. I'm assuming that they would have known about the possible elaborate abduction hoax thing, if they were planting evidence and assisting in some form or fashion, right? So you have all those things happening. It makes it unlikely. So who would plant it and why? To me, I'll be honest with you, if somebody planted something out there, it's because they want to mislead the investigation. They want investigators to think that the kids are still out there in the woods and that this is the direction that they went. Okay, so let's try to break that down. Who would do this that obviously hadn't taken a polygraph test, right? This would have to be somebody outside of the circle, which is very much like what I said with like Brian Koberger in that case in Idaho. I was like, everybody was kind of pointing the fingers at Jack and Hoodie Guy and this, that, and the third. And I was like, man, once you have your suspect in mind, it's not very hard to, work it backwards and get some evidence and plug the pieces in. The longer we went without an arrest, the longer and the more I thought that the person that was involved in that crime was further away from that inner circle and ended up being somebody who wasn't in that circle at all and somebody that wasn't on the radar of law enforcement. Because once you get on somebody's radar, there's certain things you have to do. You have to go to the scene. You have to arrive there. And in this scenario here, it's most likely because, again, the parents have taken polygraphs and stuff like that. It's most likely a crime of opportunity. So let's just say there's two possibilities here. Somebody entered the property and removed the kids out, or the kids left the property and then were met by somebody who then ended up abducting them. Now, They don't have evidence of an abduction. They've come out there and talked about it. So what does that mean? That means that they've probably done some geofencing. They've looked at the phones in the area, and they've been able to figure out if there was anybody that wasn't in the area that shouldn't have been, and those that shouldn't have been in the area or that weren't common or didn't live in the area. They may have gone and spoken to them and cleared them of things. So, because this would have been like a crime of opportunity, right? I don't foresee, and it's a possibility, although small, but there is a possibility somebody knew that these kids were there at Daniel's house, and they targeted them for some sort of kidnapping, and they watched the house for days or whatever the case may be, and somehow they didn't come up on any of the ring footage or the CCTV that law enforcement pulled from the area the days leading up to the disappearance. Yeah, maybe they changed vehicles every day or something. They weren't in the same one. There's a small possibility of that, right? Or most likely, if there is an abduction, that this is a crime of opportunity. Somebody either drove up and saw the kids walking down the street, took the opportunity to do that, or somebody was doing something else at the house and then just came across the kids. Now, I have been very suspicious of a neighbor who lives in the area, who has an extensive history. He's been arrested for a few things, mainly theft, drug paraphernalia, and possession, and also, I think I had read violent acts. And so, these were all from Canadian newspapers and articles. Not newspapers, aging myself here, websites from news media. And so I'm not going to give his name out there because I don't know for sure. And I'm not the type of person that wants to create more victims out of a situation where I don't know for sure. But I will say that this guy has a history of theft, a major history of theft. And so if somebody was going to enter the property for a nefarious reason, like maybe perhaps going to go steal something, one, I don't put it beyond somebody for looking in the trash if they're a thief who's trying to support a habit, which is what it kind of sounded like to me. It was for work and it was for a habit. I mean, if you're getting arrested for drugs and also theft, usually go hand in hand, right? And so, some folks, and this is from my experience, I've dealt with a lot of folks who burglarized homes, and I've arrested many of them who were junkies or did this and that. They went through the trash for things that they can steal and take and clean up and try to sell or fix and sell, those type of things. So the blanket being, maybe perhaps there was a piece of blanket in the trash. Could somebody have gone through it who was a thief in the area, who'd been literally kicked out of a different town for the amount of things that they had stolen? They live in the opposite direction of where this blanket is located. Not far, within 500 yards of Daniel's house. Now, but they live, let me draw this out real quick. I'm not pointing out any house in any area, but they live this direction, not that direction. You get what I'm saying? So it's a little bit different. Maybe I should open it up more because it's further this way. Now, this person here, their phone, because of the service in the area, would it be indistinguishable from being at their home, at Daniel's house, or over here at the blanket site? Couldn't tell with advanced timing records. Now, you would be able to tell with Daniel's phone if he ever did, because he turned in his phone to law enforcement. And so they did a download of his phone, and they did the GPS on his phone, and that GPS chip is like 6 meters accurate of where you're at. Super accurate. Much different than having to go through advanced call timing records. So to me, if somebody committed this crime with the evidence that they have, it would have had to have been somebody that lived close, had to have been somebody who whose phone wouldn't have been indistinguishable of being in that area or at their house. You're looking for somebody who probably has a history, a record. This guy does. This guy also claimed to not know. I believe this one. I'm not sure if it's him, because I've heard it is him, but I've also heard it wasn't. So I don't know, but I do know somebody had said that they had interviewed that they weren't aware that there was kids that lived there. I heard it was him. I'm not too certain about that one. But his kids, the guy that I am talking about, his kids did ride the bus with Jack and Lilly. And so, you know, he would have been familiar with them to a certain extent. They live fairly close to each other. So I'm assuming they would have to be at the same bus stop, those type of things. Like I said, if somebody abducted them, and the reason why I said this is because this blanket situation is weird. It's up high. It's really high. And I haven't seen it, so I can't talk to how it looks, but Daniel described it being almost wrapped around there, like draped on there, but kind of wrapped around. And from the pictures, I guess, that they had seen, I don't know. It sounds like it'd be difficult for a child to do. Now, I haven't seen it personally, so I can't say, yes, that's what the pictures look like. That's what it is. End of story. I have no idea. You know, my speculation on that part. But, you know, if these kids, because I still do think that there's a good possibility that they wandered off, you know, if these kids were gone by 9:00 or 9:10, because it's Janie that hears them outside, and it's after 8:48, and it's not till 10:00 that police are called, right? And it's 10:27 when police arrive. So let's put it about, let's say 10 minutes, 15 minutes that Malaya gave to Daniel and for her to look around the area before they call 911. You're looking at 45 minutes. It literally would have only taken 16 minutes to get to where the blanket is if you're walking. You know, if here, I mean, let me measure it out, so we know for a fact. I want to change this from yards to, dang it, wrong one. Miles. All right. I mean, it's not even a mile away. It's 0.7 miles. And then up the rest of the way, I mean, it's barely a mile, just over a mile. It's 1.1 miles from Daniel's house to where the boot print was. I mean, a person can walk that in about 15 minutes, 16, 20 minutes for these little kids. I mean, they were gone at least twice as long, at least 40 minutes, in my opinion. They could have gone pretty far. They could have gone really, really far. I want to say thank you to Deidre. Sorry if I said that wrong. $4.99 super sticker. Thank you so much. Appreciate your support. So, I mean, I personally think that the kids were gone longer than they think, in 20 minutes. I do. I think they were gone at least 40 minutes before they were noticed that they were gone. And they could have gone pretty far. Now, why they left, no idea. You know, have zero idea. You know, and the other thing too is, like, they could have walked out this way. You know, they got their boot print here. What would make them come this way? Maybe something scared them. You know, why would that's if they walked there. I don't know. Because then we gotta factor that in too, right? Let's just say, and this is why I only put the whole 20% there when it comes to the abduction theory, because what did this guy do? Did he go and put the blanket over here to misdirect and then drive up over here and then put footprints into the ground here. It sounds unlikely. You know what I mean? But that deal there up in the sky, I mean, up in the about 6 feet up is freaking crazy. And I still do think that there's a possibility that, let's just say they walked all the way up there. You know, at any point, if they did walk up there, a bear could have come out of nowhere, or a wolf or coyote or some other type of animal that scared them off, scared them into the forest somewhere, into the woods, and they got lost. This is from May 28th. This is from Janie's home. And so you can't see it, but back here there's a black bear. You can kind of see it closer right here, right behind the vehicle there. And then you can definitely see it right here. There's that big boy. Or mama. Could be a mama. And if it's a mama, it's even more dangerous, to be honest with you. And so, you know, is it possible that while they were out on the trail there, that something spooked them? Maybe something spooked them to head down this direction. Or once they've gotten this way, something could have spooked them into any different directions. I don't know. But let's look at where that was. So this was the RCMP yesterday doing their search out where the blanket was. So this is the tree where the blanket was found. All right. So this is the distance, and it seems like it's up at an angle. Like you're going upward. So it's even less likely that it just kind of flew from the street. You know what I'm saying? Let's see. This is where Janie's pointing out the boot print.
To look for Jack and Lilly. Now, if you cross the road onto your right side, this here is the pipeline that would be in back of my place.
And so she shows that. Let me fast forward this. So I just kind of want to get to
the pipeline.
See how it is actually going up. It was hard to see from this angle here.
So the pipeline was back that way. Now this is the tree. This is an old road.
It is at an incline. Man, this makes it even more difficult to believe. It was just flung in there. You guys hear what I'm saying? This one's weird. Is there a walking path shortcut from the home to the blanket? There's not. There is not. Let me pull that up real quick. See, this is where you'd have to go down the main street, and this is basically what it looks like. They would have been walking down the road here, and then would have turned up. You know, up that direction. This is the only way. If they could go, see, to get to it through the back, you have to go back here, cut through the forest, like this area here. Then you see this trail right here. Then you go up the trail, and then it opens up again, and then there's another trail going this direction. And then you turn up. And then from here, you'd walk into the open until you get to the pipeline here. And then from this pipeline, you can come straight across this way. I don't necessarily think that's plausible. I don't think that's plausible. I think it's most likely that they came this direction, just walked all along the side of the roadway, which, I mean, if you look at it, they would have been walking right along here. It's not a lot of space there. It's super dangerous. There's not much of a shoulder. You know what I mean? And so, but that's what it looks like. So let's go back to the video. It is at an elevation. Let's start off from the beginning. You see where it's at? It's back here. That tree, actually. It's way back here. That's weird, man. And like I said, if you're coming in this direction, which Daniel said he didn't see it in the beginning, right? And apparently he was on ATVs, running through the forest, running through the woods. You could hear the helicopter above him. My assumption is that he came out this direction and was coming the direction that this silver vehicle was facing. So it would have been difficult for him to have seen the blanket, in my opinion.
Here, this is an old road that doesn't go very far in the woods. This is the tree where the blanket was found, right here where the ribbons are. Now, if you can look from the ground here to here is where the blanket was found, on that branch right there.
It's weird. The blanket is weird. Let's find where Daniel's at. So this is the one that Daniel did for me. I'm going to mute this. That is too loud. All right, there you go.
Where the blanket was found, you can clearly see what's visible from the road. It's like 15 feet from the road. And this is where the blanket was found. You can clearly see what's visible from the road. It's like 15 feet from the road.
I mean, it's visible if you're looking that way.
Yeah, a little more than 15 feet. And this is the exact branch. So way higher than 5 feet in the air. It's actually over my head, so it's probably 6 feet. That one right there. It's draped over that branch.
See, he says it was draped over. Now, could the kids have been walking through there, saw something and flung it, try to catch something, and then couldn't get it down? Maybe. I don't know. They're kids, right? I mean, 4 and 6. I don't know. But it's from there, it's still a pretty good long walk down the street, down the dirt road to where the footprints were found. Margaret says, I may not have seen this, but searchers would have seen bright pink. I mean, they could have. There's so many things that searchers miss. It's not. They're trained. They go out there. They know what they're looking for. But it's not a perfect science. It's not, searches don't bat 100. They often do come back not finding anything. And oftentimes, many times where a search has occurred and something wasn't found, that later on something is found and it was just overlooked. It was missed. It was just not spotted. Somebody didn't look in that direction, whatever the case may be. There's so many reasons. I mean, I go back to the Delphi case where those little girls were left outside, out there, and there was opportunities that they could have been found the first night that they went missing, but they weren't. Now that wasn't a professional search or anything like that, but it's I've been a part of these searches. It's not easy. And I've not been in a search this magnitude. One that I remember the most vividly was a little boy went missing from the park. We ended up finding him a few miles down the road or down the river. It drowned, and it was unfortunate. But it took us a few days to find him. But let's see. He shouldn't touch it. Well, it's been already. It's been looked at. It's been everything's been done to it. So it's not like there's anything else that they're going to go out there and look for. Yes, please hit that subscribe button. Follow. You guys know what to do. No scent past the end of the driveway. Well, here's the thing about the scent. And so I kind of explained it a little bit earlier, but I'll explain it again if you're just coming in. The dogs don't scent like they don't smell for specific people. Like they don't get a clothing or an item of the victims, smell that, and then go off and find it. What they're doing is they're looking for a scent that is out of place when they're out there searching. And this is information straight from RCMP that Janie had asked and gotten this information relayed to me. So the reason they're probably at the driveway is because that's where a lot of people were congregating at that time. And so that smell was probably very strong. You had a lot of family members on either side coming, and Malaya's family was showing up, and then searchers and a bunch of other folks. And so there's that aspect of it. And then you also have the aspect of margin of error and how accurate some of these dogs can get in these areas. It's not an exact science. It's not a technology. It's not. You're relying on animals, and you're relying on, a lot of people look at circumstances and expect perfect scenarios. Not in every situation. I think it was raining that day. That may have played a role. There was a lot of things that were happening. There was a lot of people out in that area, a lot of searchers, where the boot print was and the blanket, they were found by searchers. So there was people in those areas. And so, the dogs probably were more alerted to the areas where a lot of people were trafficking in and out, walking through the normal walkway areas for the searchers that were out there. And that was one of the questions that Janie had. She's like, how are these dogs, because she was talking with them today, she's like, how are the dogs being able to determine if they're following Jack and Lilly or a searcher? And they can't, unfortunately. They can't tell the difference. They just know that it's a scent that is not from that area. And so the expectation of high accuracy really shouldn't be there, especially in that type of scenario, because it doesn't seem like it's a situation where I would expect a high amount of accuracy on. What's going on, Travis? What is utterly fascinating to me is that it takes about 10 times the amount of time to explain the info is correct, false, bullcrap, as it does explaining good, solid updates. Yeah, it does. Sometimes it does. Let's see. What's going on, Kent? There's lakes, rivers, ponds, bogs, creeks. Yeah. And the cadaver dogs can smell through the water for decomposition. That's one of the things that they can do is they can smell for bodies that have been buried or underwater. So in those scenarios, if there's been a decomposing body, the cadaver dog most likely, I guess, would find it. I mean, again, there's probably a margin of error there, right? So I wouldn't put all my eggs in that basket that say just because the dogs don't find anything that they're not out there. And that's a big area. And they could have gotten lost and walked in one direction and continued to walk for a long period of time. You know, they weren't found within a short period of time. That doesn't mean that they weren't moving, you know, after 10 a.m. You know, they may have gotten further than the search perimeter and continue to walk for a long period of time, you know, lost. So we don't know exactly how. I mean, obviously they weren't found, so we don't know if they did wander off. We don't know how far they could have gotten. You know, if they got outside of that perimeter search and they continue to walk in one direction. I mean, look at this. This is a lot of area. This isn't the suburbs or the city. You know, this is tremendous amount of forest in several different directions. Hey, what's going on? Elizabeth comes in with $10 saying, do we know their bus route? Could they have been trying to get to school? From what I've been told was that this was the direction towards their school. Because I asked Sunny from It's a Crime and Shame if that would have been the case. And she said it is the direction they would have gone. Now, if Lily had her backpack, right, even though that's not her backpack for school, somebody with an opportunistic mindset in that moment could utilize the fact that she has a backpack to say, hey, I'm glad I found you guys. Your mom and dad told me that I need to take you to school. And if the kids are naive, which 4 and 6 year olds are, I can see a situation like that happening, you know, especially because of the backpack. Now, the blanket in the tree is interesting. That's the one thing that just kind of really bothers me. Not gonna lie. But thank you so much, Elizabeth. Appreciate the support. If you have your questions for me, please put a couple of stars. I'll answer a few before we call it a show. But overall, like I said, the towing, for those that are tuning in now, Daniel had gotten pulled over for a traffic violation, and the result of it was his vehicle wasn't registered correctly, apparently, or not yet registered. You only have X amount of days, and so since it wasn't registered in a place where you can't just park it, they towed it. They've already released it to him. He just hasn't picked it up. And this was a vehicle that was purchased, I think, within the last 40 days. So it wasn't the vehicle that would have been involved in the disappearance. And like I said, it sounds like it's a nothing burger when it comes to that. So just kind of FYI, guys, on that. All right. Hey, Barbara, how's it going? We're going to be having, we're going to have Dr. Vona on Friday. We're going to be talking about Timothy's case. I might come on tomorrow night and actually talk about Timothy's case. Let's see. The bus goes by their driveway at 7:30. Yeah, that's good. You know, I know they were out there earlier. I think they come back and circle around. They took the video from the bus, so I don't think they found anything on it. Nothing that would lead to an abduction. You know, that's what they said, right? That there was no signs of an abduction. I know Daniel says that he believes that the bus video or surveillance indicates that the blanket was planted. You know, I don't know why he believes that, you know, but my assumption is that it passed by at a certain point. Maybe it wasn't there. And then it passed by later on in the evening or in the afternoon or at some other point before it was found and it was there or something to that nature. Or maybe when it did pass by, it wasn't there and then they found it later. So, you know, there's some scenarios there. I have no idea. That's just my speculation about that. But I don't know. Let's see. In my opinion, something happened on the way home. On the way home from where? On the way home from where? So the property is 2 acres. Is it confirmed that they ran the dogs on that 2 acres out of hundreds? I know that I can't give off too much information because I know they're going back out to certain areas tomorrow, and I don't want to, what's what I'm looking for? I don't want that to interfere with anything. I don't want people showing up. And so, I'm going to keep that to myself. I know that they have searched the pipeline, they have searched the blankets, and they've searched Daniel's property. I don't know where else they have searched outside of those areas, outside of where they're going to tomorrow, which is a different location. I know where that location is, but I would say it's a very small amount of area that they have searched comparable to what the area surrounds it. It would be probably very close to, I think they said it was like an 8-kilometer area that they were searching. I would say it's a lot less than that they've brought the dogs out to. But they've searched the property and the surrounding area. And what they did is they swapped the dogs around. They had 2 teams out there, and they've done, you know, one dog did the property, another dog did the pipeline and the blankets, and then they flipped them around. And then tomorrow they're going to be searching a different area. And so I don't know if they have anything else planned after that. I don't think so. But I wouldn't say that they ran through hundreds of acres or anything like that. I would say it's relatively limited, you know, to those areas. Now, I think they did do an extensive search, you know, where the blanket and the boot prints were. I do think that those areas were searched extensively, but I'm not necessarily certain, like, the area in between, like Daniel's house in there and all those hundreds of acres, as you mentioned. I don't think so. But that's just my opinion. I'm not out there. All right. Let's see. Police combed the whole place. Had to be on the way home, or would Daniel say 100% won't find anything? Well, Daniel said that they won't find anything because his assumption is that the kids, they went missing, bunch of search crews, drones, thermo, that they even picked up some wildlife in the area, but they were quite a bit of a distance away. They had classified technology that was used, I guess, from the government. I don't know. That's what he said in an interview. They went throughout all the stops. There was a search team that was nearby that was out there immediately. And they feel that they would have found them if they were out there during that extensive search. I think he's, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, I think he's underestimating the density of the woods and how kids can get lost, and how far they can go. You know, I personally think they went outside of the search area, but that's just my opinion. Let's see. Belinda Believe says, I don't think the blanket has any meaning either, Kent. I mean, it has to have something. It had to have gotten there some way. You know, it's got to be an answer to something, whether it's an answer to, you know, something else, but it's just weird that it's out there. It's in between where Daniel's house is and the boot print. And it's on the path that you would have been walking to have gotten there. I mean, it's weird. I think there's probably more answers than not with the blanket. DT, how do you know where they are searching tomorrow? Same way I knew that certain documents were going to be dropped in the Brian Koberger case well before they were dropped, or certain information that they were looking for. I have sources. I have many sources in this case, not as many as I did in the Brian Koberger case, admittedly. In the Brian Koberger case, I had probably 12, 13, somewhere around there. Some that were higher ups in certain places, some that just lived in the area. Same thing here. A lot of people that live in the area, some people that are close, some people that are a little bit further, some people that just live in the area. Perhaps somebody of authority. But yeah. But I know where they're going to be at tomorrow. Kind of like I knew when they were there yesterday. I got check this out. Let me pull it up. And this will be the last thing we do. This is actually them searching. This is this is one of the canine crews. As you can see right here, that back window's open. There's a cage. Let me see if I can make this bigger. And that's where the canine is. This is the canine unit for the RCMP. They're out there doing their search. I got this during the time of the search. So I know they're going to be out there tomorrow. Not at these locations, at a different one. But not something that we'll see. We'll see if they find something out there. If they do, I'll report to you. If they don't, I'll report to you as well. In my mind, there's probably 10 vehicles they will check as well. 10 vehicles. What are you talking about, Kent? And I've not spoken to Kent about this. Me and Kent have talked, but not about the search for the dogs. No. All righty, guys. Let's see. Daniel might not even remember when they stopped using that part of the blanket after it warmed up, left it laying. I can think of several ways it got there, but we shall see. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, could it have gotten there at some other time? Possibly, could it have been there? And that's what I meant. Like, there's got to be an answer there. Could it have gotten there a week before they threw it out? Animal got into it and got into the trash, took it out, and it just somehow made its way over there. I guess it's possible, but it's just weird that it's right in between where the boot print was and Daniel's house, and on the same path that you would have been walking. So I just think that there could be more than, I think it's more than likely than not that it have something to do with the case than it doesn't. But all righty, guys. Well, did anybody arrive at the search on day one show up that no one would expect? Not that I know of. From what I understand, everybody that showed up was because there was calls being made that the kids were missing and everybody was trying to help. Yeah, let's leave Kent alone. Kent's a good guy. He's just trying to find answers. All righty, guys. Well, that's going to do it for me tonight. You guys have a great night. I'll be back on probably tomorrow night. So please hit the like button, subscribe, ring the notification bell. I'll see you guys then. Until next time, peace out, y'all.